In Las Vegas, an ex-convict is back to his old ways. Big money cons, low-level burglary, and violent assaults. Local police track him, but he's gone. The FBI joins the case, and the violence escalates. To capture the desperate fugitive, authorities need to anticipate his next move.
Women are most often assaulted by someone they know, but sometimes a stranger attacks. Near Las Vegas in December of 2000, a young woman became the latest victim of a violent sex offender. Before authorities could locate him, he would add murder to his list of crimes. I'm Jim Kallstrom, former head of the FBI's New York office. FBI agents tracked the armed fugitive across the country, and as they closed in, the gunman was determined to avoid capture at any cost.
Las Vegas, Nevada. Beneath the bright lights are thousands of workers keeping the town running, and criminals ready to take whatever they can. Early on the morning of December 11th, 2000, in the Las Vegas suburb of Henderson, a 17-year-old waitress was on her way to work. In a parking lot, a man offered her a ride to work.
Who's going to work?
She declined.
Let's go. Get in. Get in. Open. Hurry up, move it. Get in.
His gun stopped her from crying out. He drove her to a secluded area where he sexually assaulted her. As soon as she could, she took her only chance and fled, running to a nearby restaurant to call 911. Henderson police took the call.
Are you injured? Do you need an ambulance, ma'am?
The girl gave a description of her attacker and his vehicle.
You say that was a red Eclipse? Did he have any weapons?
The patrol officer headed to the restaurant to interview the young woman and take her to a nearby medical center. En route, he spotted a red sports car that matched the description given by the victim. When the officer approached, the driver sped away.
Matching that suspect via description. It's a red Mitsubishi Eclipse, number one travel lane of westbound Warm Springs at Valley.
As they neared the city and busier streets, the suspect's driving became more erratic. The officer decided the risk to civilians was too great and pulled back. But police now had the vehicle's license plate number.
A vehicle matching that suspect via description.
Henderson PD ran the tags and traced the vehicle to a Las Vegas address.
Warm Springs at Valley.
Las Vegas detective Barry Jensen contacted the owner, who explained he had given the car to his daughter to use. The owner said he and his daughter, Rachel Mills, would meet Detective Jensen at her apartment. She had just gotten off work from a local casino. When the detective arrived, he told them about the car eluding police and the reported sexual assault. Rachel said that her husband had the car that morning. He had dropped her off at work at 5 a.m., and she had not seen him since. She hoped there had been some mistake.
She knew that he had been arrested for sexual assault in the past. She knew that he had been in prison, but she didn't believe any of that was true, or she didn't want to believe that any of that was true.
Rachel had noticed their car had been parked across the lot. Detective Jensen asked her to check the apartment and see if her husband had returned. He and her father would check out the car. Looking around the apartment, she realized that her husband had taken most of his belongings. It appeared as if he had left her. The father owned the car, but since Rachel and her husband were the regular drivers, only they could consent to a search.
His stuff is gone. His clothes, the drawers, all the stuff he keeps on the dresser, photos, I don't know. Everything seems it's gone.
Would you give me your verbal consent to search the car without getting a search warrant?
Oh, okay.
You got a set of keys.
Though shaken by what was happening, Rachel gave Jensen permission to search the vehicle. The detective believed the placement of the car far from the apartment was telling.
In my opinion, it was hidden in the parking lot. I think he knew the police were going to find his apartment. If his car wasn't parked right out front, I think he felt that he had more time. He was creating more distance between law enforcement and himself.
Inside the car, Jensen noticed that the few personal effects matched what the assault victim described, pointing more suspicion toward Rachel's husband. She said he didn't have a regular job, but beyond that, Rachel and her father were unable to give the detective much more information.
All they were able to tell us was that he loved to play blackjack and craps. They had no idea where he was getting the money to do that.
Jensen called for crime scene technicians to process the car, in case there was unseen evidence inside.
It's going to be about 15 minutes for the tow truck to get here.
He had to tell Rachel that her husband was a strong suspect in the assault of a 17-year-old girl. At his request, she gave Jensen a photo of her husband, Magfour Mansour. If Mansour was the assailant, Jensen hoped the victim could ID him based on the photo.
I want you to look at every picture.
At the police station, Detective Jensen interviewed the young woman. She identified Magfour Mansour as her attacker. Nevada police charged him with kidnapping and sexual assault. Jensen found that Mansour had an extensive rap sheet.
He'd been arrested several times for sexual-related offenses, sexual assault, open and gross lewdness. He'd also been arrested for burglaries, credit card fraud, and weapons violations.
While in prison, Mansour had been diagnosed with a severe personality disorder that bordered on sociopathic.
He was a sophisticated con artist. He could make people do things that they wouldn't normally do. He was a serial rapist and a career criminal.
For several days, police had no good leads on the case. Then Jensen got a tip from a new ally.
Sexual assault, Jensen.
Mansour's father-in-law.
Yeah, Richard. He'd been digging around talking to family friends, and he knew that Mansour was a big gambler at one of the local hotels, and he felt that he would have a room there. I found that he did have a room that was comped because he was a large money player.
Since hotel security had cameras in the hallways, the detective asked them to watch and call police if anyone entered Mansour's room.
They weren't set up to make an arrest or to grab Mansour. I didn't feel comfortable asking them to because I believed that he was dangerous.
That night, a security officer spotted a man entering Mansour's room. He immediately contacted Las Vegas police.
He has hotel security. He has returned to the hotel.
Detectives were on their way. But the man exited the room less than a minute after he went in and casually slipped away. When the Vice Squad detectives arrived, they checked his room.
We found a suitcase and some family pictures, nothing else that would help her further our investigation.
They searched the entire hotel casino, but there was no sign of Mansour. They realized in order to find him, they needed more resources, and turned the case over to Special Agent Scott Backen and Detective Brian Dunaway of the Las Vegas FBI's Criminal Apprehension Team, a multi-agency squad responsible for tracking down fugitives in the Las Vegas area. The squad's first step was to distribute informational sheets about Mansour to area hotels.
When we have someone that we're looking for and we believe that he's gone to a hotel or something, we have a system called TRAX, T-R-A-X, which is it's a fancy fax machine. It allows us to send color digital photos to large groups of people simultaneously to alert them. Those people that don't have TRAX alerts, we went to old-fashioned police work. We were knocking on doors and delivering these things and conducting interviews and making sure that everyone knew about him.
We're looking for this guy right here. He comes under a few different aliases.
Investigators checked registers for known aliases of Mansour. They found nothing.
These two gentlemen are from the FBI.
But some security personnel recognized Mansour as a suspect in a string of room burglaries plaguing the Vegas Strip. They described his frequent cons. They said Mansour preyed on tourists, mostly those of Middle Eastern or Asian origin.
Okay, thank you.
He would often pose as a translator or as a tour guide, and he would do this in order to gain the confidence of people that were in town who had money. After gaining their confidence, he would use this information to usually enter their rooms because he was able to contact the hotel staff and pose as these people.
When the tourists returned to their rooms, they found them ransacked.
Right away.
Over several days, Mansour had stolen more than $250,000 in cash and jewelry.
204. We have been completely robbed. We have been robbed.
Everything is gone.
Agent Backen believed the suspect would use the money to flee Nevada.
We obtained an unlawful flight to avoid prosecution warrant, which is a federal warrant, charging him with fleeing one state, going to another to avoid prosecution for the underlying charge, which was sexual assault. With the federal warrant, it allowed us to engage other FBI offices around the country in searching for Mansour.
They tried to narrow the scope of the nationwide search by reviewing any piece of information they could find regarding the suspect.
We were able to gather INS records, immigration records, that type of stuff, and we found that he had been in their custody for a great deal of time, and he was here citing some sort of religious persecution. And then we were able to pull in the records from New Jersey and the other places that he had been at. We found that he had been involved in gambling, fraud, generally property crimes types of things.
Mansour's wife gave them long-distance phone records which showed many calls to casinos around the country.
We began developing a profile of him as a gambler, and once we did that, we focused our investigation on the gambling establishments.
One of the gambling communities they notified was New Orleans. Casinos there should look out for it. On the morning of January 9th, 2001, 29 days after the Las Vegas sexual assault and kidnapping, a man in an obvious wig appeared at the New Orleans airport. Paying cash, he booked a flight to Las Vegas under the name Francis Gabriel. In the middle of the transaction, he changed his destination to Los Angeles.
There you go. Thank you.
Ticket agents are trained to spot suspicious activity.
Security, please. Yes.
She notified airport police. The wig, cash, and odd behavior was enough probable cause for the undercover officer to question the man. He followed him outside, then asked to see his identification ticket.
I'm asking you, you got your ticket?
Soon, New Orleans authorities would learn the identity of the carjacker and join the hunt for an elusive fugitive.
Yeah, I'm at door 6A. He ran up on the roof.
In January 2001, Las Vegas authorities hunted fugitive Magfour Mansour, suspected of robbery, kidnapping, and sexual assault. A month later at the New Orleans airport, a man in a disguise assaulted a police officer, then escaped in a carjacked pickup truck. Undercover Jefferson Parish police assigned to the airport reported the incident. And an APB for the truck and its driver went out to police in nearby parishes. "30 minutes later, a St. Charles Parish deputy spotted the pickup truck 10 miles from the airport. He called in the plates, confirming it was the stolen truck. But the deputy knew there was construction ahead, so he did not pursue at high speed. The truck entered the road construction zone, but the driver was not going to stop and swerved toward a highway worker. The St. Charles Parish deputy arrived seconds later. Seeing the worker down, he called for an ambulance, then went to check the truck. The carjacker was gone. At the airport, police searched a piece of luggage the fugitive had dropped. Since it was left unattended on airport property, Lieutenant Glenn Toka did not need a warrant.
We found some identification with a photograph of the suspect, an Italian passport. When we checked that, it was found to have been a stolen passport, which the suspect had obviously placed his photograph on.
Police also found a list of stolen credit card numbers, players' cards from casinos throughout the United States, and multiple Social Security numbers. Because of possible interstate fraud, Jefferson Parish Police called the New Orleans FBI. They forwarded the photo and name used on the stolen passport to Special Agent Sandra Zulli.
We immediately started running that name through our system to try to identify photographs of anyone that used that name.
The photo of fugitive Magfour Mansour, wanted out of Las Vegas, matched the one on the passport. Calling Vegas to learn more details, Zulli confirmed it was him. Despite the best efforts of the emergency personnel, the highway worker died of his injuries. Authorities began their search for Mansour at the truck and worked outward from there. Lieutenant Toka joined the search near the Mississippi River.
We did about a mile radius search, plus the state police helped us on the perimeters that were doing the search. We had a helicopter up, plus we had tracking dogs in the location.
The area's landscape made it difficult.
There are buildings, tugboats, wharves. It's a working area, and there's a lot of abandoned warehouses there, derelict barges up on the ground and everything.
They searched for more than 24 hours, checking every conceivable hiding place.
We theorized that he had either gone into the river and drowned, or that he had made his way out of the security envelope.
Still, authorities had to assume that Mansour was alive. They hoped to determine where the fugitive had been while in New Orleans. Perhaps he would go back there. They reviewed airline passenger lists and surveillance tapes to reconstruct the fugitive's movements.
The day before, he had come down from Connecticut into New Orleans, and we were able to track him to some local casinos that he was at that night, and then the next day he was supposed to be flying out, and that's when he was confronted by the officer.
Mansour's behavior pattern was clear.
We felt that eventually he would show up at a casino, and that's why we focused on the casino security departments to make sure they were alerted to look for him in possibly a disguise.
Authorities also broadcast his photo and the aliases he used, hoping the public could help find him. Anyone with information was asked to call a dedicated tip line. Police immediately began receiving sightings. One came from a motorist who thought he had seen Mansour the night the highway worker was killed. The motorist said that night he'd been driving behind a taxi on a road near the airport. He saw a man come out of the woods and hail the taxi. It looked like Mansour. But police could not find the taxi driver, and the trail went cold.
We were receiving numerous reports of individuals who they felt looked like this individual walking down the road, sitting at a bar, at a casino, and all of these were checked out.
Yet none of the sightings led to Mansour. The next lead came from officers patrolling the nearby Mississippi River.
Shortly after the disappearance, we received a call of a body that they located floating at the bank of the river. And we knew that in the file from the Las Vegas division that we had dental records of Magfour Mansour, who had dental work done while in prison. So we obtained the dental records and had a comparison done.
The records did not match. Mansour's whereabouts were still unknown. And now that he was wanted for killing a man, he'd be more desperate than ever to avoid them. Wanted on a charge of sexual assault and kidnapping, fugitive Magfour Mansour disappeared from Las Vegas. Weeks later, he resurfaced in New Orleans, where he carjacked a truck and killed a highway worker. Not only was he moving quickly across jurisdictions, he was also using multiple identities, according to FBI Special Agent Sandra Zulli.
Magfour Mansour utilized so many different aliases. We determined that he was stealing identification cards on a regular basis while he was staying in the casino area. The players' cards that we located in the luggage were determined to be stolen from casinos.
Some of those players' cards were from casinos in Atlantic City. To follow up on them, Louisiana agents contacted the FBI's Newark field office. Special Agent Joseph Fury checked on a casino player's card Mansour used under the name Yasser Hamid.
I called the hotel casino and talked to the senior vice president in charge of security, and he advised me that Mr. Hamid had in fact been a player at their casino, and on January 3rd of 2001 had played and won approximately $50,000.
That was 6 days before the airport incident in New Orleans. But considering Mansour's lavish gambling lifestyle, the money probably would not last long.
If he was desperate for money, we thought he might come back to Atlantic City to gamble again.
Agent Fury learned a New Jersey phone number had been found in Mansour's luggage.
We didn't know the reason he had the number, whether or not he had ever called the number, or who was on the receiving end of that call.
Okay.
Authorities traced the number to a house in the Atlantic City suburb of Brigantine and set up surveillance on it. They knew the house belonged to a local cab driver, but little else. Agents watched on the slim chance the house might be connected to Mansour. Other teams of agents also searched the gambling community of Atlantic City.
We distributed wanted posters to all of the hotel casinos in Atlantic City, as well as the Atlantic City Police Department and New Jersey State Police.
Someone, somewhere, was bound to run into the elusive killer. Yet months went by with no sign of him. Then, at an Atlantic City hotel on the night of May 4th, 2001, a vacationing Pennsylvania state trooper and his wife returned to their room.
Honey?
Yeah.
And discovered they weren't alone.
Get over there. Put your hand. Everything's fine. Shut your mouth. Here's my wallet. I'm not worried about that.
The trooper recognized Mansour from wanted posters.
Don't use it. I'll kill you.
He knew the man had killed before. But for some reason, Mansour left without harming the couple or taking any money. The state trooper notified the hotel about Mansour and asked them to call the FBI.
Yes, right now. Call the FBI.
Mansour had emerged from hiding, now with a gun. Again, a threat to anyone who ran across him.
Yes, thank you. Bye. You okay?
As the case progressed, I knew he was a desperate man, living a life of luxury which he didn't earn, and he was desperate to avoid law enforcement contact.
2 days later, at 6:30 in the morning, a casino ATM alerted hotel security of someone attempting to use a stolen credit card to obtain a cash advance.
Come here a second. I need to show you something real quick. Check this guy out here on the ATM machine here. Why don't you go check that out for me? Check see what's going on.
One of the hotel security officers confronted the cardholder, who calmly explained the card belonged to him. He claimed he had reported it stolen but found it again that morning and forgot to cancel the hold on it. Asked for identification, the man handed the security officer an Indian passport that had been obviously altered. When the security officer tried to bring the man in for questioning, he pulled a gun,
Don't move, you got it. Don't follow me.
then fled. Though the officer didn't know it yet, the man he was trying to take into custody was Magfour Mansour. The suspect jumped into a nearby taxi and forced the driver to help him escape. Hotel security called the incident in to Atlantic City Police. Several units mobilized to find the carjacked taxi. But once again, Mansour was one step ahead. When he got distracted, the driver took a chance. Minutes later, witnesses outside the Taj Mahal casino saw a well-dressed man leave a taxi idling at the curb and disappear inside. Fielding the calls about the incidents, Atlantic City Police believed Mansour must be involved. Authorities immediately responded to the Taj Mahal. Witnesses' descriptions matched the fugitive. And detectives found an altered Indian passport, the one from the ATM incident. The photo was of Magfour Mansour.
The cab driver stated that Mansour told him he would shoot and kill him, as well as any police officer who stopped him, and he would not go back to jail. At that point, we kind of stepped up the investigation, knowing that it wasn't a one-time incident. It was an individual who was on a crime spree and seemed to be on a downward spiral.
Magfour Mansour had eluded authorities for months. Now, as agents surrounded the massive Taj Mahal casino, they hoped they finally had him cornered. The FBI sought Magfour Mansour for kidnapping, sexual assault, carjacking, and second-degree murder. He had eluded them in Las Vegas and New Orleans. In May of 2001, he surfaced in Atlantic City. Hoping finally to stop him, FBI Special Agent Joseph Fury organized a search of the hotel casino Mansour was seen entering.
We established a command post at the Taj Mahal with the Atlantic City Police Department, the New Jersey State Police, as well as security personnel from the Taj Mahal in an effort to locate Mansour, thinking that he may be in the hotel somewhere.
But Mansour wouldn't be easy to find. The 1,200-room hotel boasts a 135,000 square foot casino and is often filled with thousands of guests. And in service areas, there are dozens of hallways with plenty of offices and storage rooms to hide in. Investigators had to clear each one.
Clear, coming out.
Authorities feared Mansour had escaped again. They broadened the search area.
New Jersey State Police and Atlantic City Police canvassed the entire hotel casino, as well as every hotel casino in Atlantic City.
They found nothing. Somehow, Mansour had slipped away. investigators requested security tapes from all Atlantic City hotel casinos, hoping to find a lead. After reviewing hundreds of hours of tapes, they finally spotted Mansour. He was getting out of a cab. Checking the taxi's identification number, state police learned it was owned by an independent operator living outside of Atlantic City, in Brigantine.
I asked what the cab driver's name was and the location where they were going, and they told me a name which came back to the individual who I had been surveilling in anticipation of Mansour returning to the Atlantic City area.
Authorities returned to the Brigantine house with a search warrant and a SWAT team. The SWAT team moved into position. To get the cab driver out of the house, an agent called inside, posing as a dispatcher. He told the driver that one of his regular fares needed a ride.
We felt that if Mansour was inside, it might be a hostage-type situation.
Put your hands on top of your head. Put your hands on top of your head.
But the driver emerged alone, and they pulled him away so they could talk to him safely. The driver said no one else was in the house, but the arrest team had to be sure.
All clear.
It was another disappointment.
Okay.
Authorities returned to the state police barracks to interview the cab driver. He said he had driven Mansour around the Atlantic City area several times in recent years. They had become friends, but now he was more than willing to cooperate.
He immediately told us that Mansour had been at his house that morning, had pulled a gun on him, and had ordered him to drive him towards Philadelphia, which was approximately an hour drive from Atlantic City. He actually drove Mansour into Philadelphia and dropped him off.
The driver hadn't called police because Mansour knew where he lived, and he was afraid he would come back to get him. Fury notified the FBI's Philadelphia field office that Mansour might be there.
I then drove from Atlantic City to Philadelphia with pictures of Mansour and assisted the Philadelphia division.
Sir, FBI.
The agents went to a bus station near where Mansour was dropped off, looking for anyone who had seen him.
We showed the picture to several counter attendants, one who recognized the picture and said that Mansour had purchased a bus ticket to New York.
Yes, sir.
It seemed Mansour had gone to Philadelphia, only to make his trail more difficult to follow. On May 9th, 2001, the FBI added Magfour Mansour to its 10 most wanted fugitives list. This made him a top priority for every FBI agent in the nation, according to Task Force member Brian Dunaway.
Him being on the FBI's Most Wanted does a few things. It allocates a great deal more resources to the investigation, and it places a $50,000 reward for his capture.
The following day, security at Atlantic City's Taj Mahal Resort reported that a gunman matching Mansour's description had robbed the hotel jewelry store of $300,000 worth of watches. Surveillance video captured the plate number of the limo Mansour used to escape. At the Newark field office, the FBI questioned the limousine driver. He said he had picked Mansour up in New York City earlier that day.
Yeah,
When Mansour had called for the limo, he asked to be picked up on a certain street corner. The driver didn't know where he was staying. He said Mansour seemed like any other high-stakes gambler. But around 8 o'clock, he heard security alarms. Then Mansour jumped in and ordered him to speed away. The driver followed orders. Mansour had a gun. The fugitive got out of the limousine 5 blocks from the robbed hotel and hopped into another cab, a white Crown Victoria with New Jersey plates. The FBI asked local police to issue an all-points bulletin for white Crown Victoria cabs in Atlantic City. That night, police stopped every taxi matching the description. Eventually, they found the driver who had picked up Mansour. He reported that he had taken the man to Philadelphia and dropped him off at the airport. The FBI learned that only 2 flights had departed Philadelphia late enough for Mansour to have boarded. Both were bound for Las Vegas. Manifests did not show Mansour's name, but he might be flying under an alias they did not know yet. If Mansour were on either flight, authorities in Las Vegas would be ready for him. In the pre-dawn hours of May 11, 2001, the FBI believed deadly fugitive Magfour Mansour might be aboard one of 2 flights to Las Vegas. New Jersey FBI Special Agent Joseph Fury kept working as the planes traveled cross-country.
I contacted the Las Vegas division to advise them that Mansour had committed the armed robbery in Atlantic City, and he may in fact be en route back to Las Vegas. The Las Vegas Police Department, as well as the FBI, were at the airport waiting for both planes to arrive.
Vegas detective Brian Dunaway had been tracking Mansour from the beginning. He knew how dangerous and desperate the fugitive was.
Everyone that we had talked to, everyone that knew anything about him, knew that he wasn't going to go back to jail. He had made those statements, and his actions were just of such desperation that he wasn't a person that wasn't going to face these charges. And his previous incarcerations and the records that they kept on him there was just no way he was going back. So he was going to go out in a blaze of glory.
Mansour frequently used disguises and false IDs to travel. But he wasn't on the first flight. When the second plane landed, agents cleared it too. From the limo driver they'd interviewed, they knew he had last stayed in New York City.
At that point, I contacted Special Agent Ted Miller of the New York Division to advise him that Mansour was not on either flight that went to Las Vegas, and it would be more likely that he would be in New York City.
Reviewing Mansour's phone records from Las Vegas, agents interviewed Mansour's associates in New York, reminding them of the $50,000 reward. Eventually, they tracked down Mansour's regular limo driver in the city.
In New York, it's very hard to get a taxi cab, and you have several private limos that will be at your beck and call. And this limo driver was willing to drive Mansour because he seemed to have quite a bit of money.
He said he hadn't seen Mansour recently, but on previous trips, he always picked Mansour up from the same Midtown hotel.
Okay. If you think of anything else that might help us, please give us a call.
The limo driver was cooperative, and was going to take them to an area where he thought Mansour was staying. It was approximately 6 in the morning when Agent Miller advised me they had located the hotel.
FBI agents, New York City police, and U.S. Marshals headed to the hotel. Special Agent Timothy LeTurner was part of the arrest team.
We got a call from Special Agent Miller saying the subject Mansour committed an armed robbery last night at the Taj Mahal Casino in Atlantic City, and we believe he retreated to New York, and we think we have good leads that he may be at the hotel located at West 47th Street.
The investigators set up on surveillance outside. Before the stakeout, they had been briefed on the case and warned of the danger.
We talked about how he brandished a handgun during several crimes he committed. We talked about the armed rape of a 17-year-old girl and a murder he committed in Louisiana. So we knew about his propensity to violence.
Several investigators went to check with the front desk. The clerk was able to confirm that Mansour had used one of his aliases to check in. He gave them Mansour's room number, but didn't know if he was there.
Our plan at that time was we were going to make a ruse phone call into the room. We believed Mansour might be staying in. We had agents outside the room. We had agents in the lobby. What we decided to do was a wake-up call. If he answered or we heard stirring in the room, we would know he'd be in there, or someone would be in there. We made several calls. We got no response telephonically. We heard nothing in the room.
Mansour must have gone out. They hoped he would return. Hours later, they spotted him. He was alone and heading back into the hotel.
Come on, guys.
This time, they wouldn't let him slip away. Mansour had long vowed not to be taken alive. He went for a gun and aimed at a detective.
From the time I saw the gun to the time my weapon was fired, you're talking about 2 or 3 seconds. So not a whole lot of time to think about it. You have innocent civilians in the lobby. Missing isn't an option.
Even with 3 9mm rounds in him, Mansour continued to struggle as they took him into custody. Because of their training, the arrest team was unharmed.
Things had to be instinctive. Things had to be committed to muscle memory. And those reactions that occurred that morning were reactions based on excellent training. They were the byproduct of great training. So my recommendation to other agents would be receive as much training as you can. Try and get it to the point where it's instinctive.
The pursuit of Mansour had lasted 5 months, involving more than a dozen law enforcement agencies. New York City emergency personnel tried to stabilize Mansour, but he died en route to the hospital. His rampage was finally over.
Not any one law enforcement agency can handle an investigation of this magnitude by themselves, and without the cooperation and efforts of all of the law enforcement agencies, I don't think Mansour would have been caught without causing harm to someone else.
In the United States, violent extremists embark on a campaign of terror nearly 2 decades before the Oklahoma City bombing. Bank robberies, bombings, escalating acts of destruction. When their agenda turns to murder, FBI counterterrorism experts team up with state police to stop a group of violent radicals before they strike again.
In the 1970s, a string of bank robberies and bombings spread fear and destruction along the East Coast. The FBI faced a new breed of criminal, the domestic terrorists. I'm Jim Kallstrom, former head of the FBI's New York office. For nearly a decade, these self-proclaimed revolutionaries operate underground. Law enforcement vowed to unearth them once and for all.
Interstate 80 is an isolated stretch of highway in northern New Jersey. On December 21st, 1981, Trooper Philip LaMonaco of the New Jersey State Police makes a routine traffic stop. The driver seems nervous. LaMonaco sees that he has a gun.
Put your hands up on the steering wheel! Put your license up on the dash! Step out of the vehicle now! Keep your hands up! Back up against the car now! Stay there! Don't move, just stay there! Got any more weapons on you? Keep stay there, don't you move! Now, sir, stay in the car! Stay in the car, sir! Stay in the car! Stay in the car, sir!
A passing motorist spots the empty police cruiser and stops. He checks to make sure everything is all right. In the snow, he sees the road trooper, bleeding and motionless. He uses the police radio to call for help.
State Trooper Barracks, go ahead.
I'm here on I-80. I've met a patrol car.
What's your name, sir?
Troopers on duty at the Blairstown State Police Barracks are surprised to hear a civilian voice on their radio.
Trooper's on the ground. He's motionless.
Take a good shot. Not moving at all.
Stay at the car, sir. We're on the way.
All available troopers respond to the report of the shooting.
We have an officer shot. Officer down.
Charles Coe is a major with the New Jersey State Police.
Virtually every road trooper that was on duty that day responded to the scene. We're all basically road troopers to start with. That's where we started from. We all knew the dangers involved, and of course you never think it's going to happen to you, and you really don't think it's going to happen to someone like a Phil LaMonaco.
LaMonaco is a legend in the department. Arriving at the scene, Lieutenant Richard Ryan can't believe he's been shot.
Initial shot struck Phil in his chest area. He was wearing a bulletproof vest, but the impact of the shots kind of turned him a little, and one of the shots went in under his armpit and went directly into his heart and basically killed him, that one shot.
Investigators find LaMonaco's service revolver empty. All 6 rounds fired, indicating the trooper had gone down fighting. Lieutenant John Mendres processes the crime scene, finding further evidence of the gun battle.
I obtained pieces of glass fragments, 12 9mm bullet casings at the scene. They were in the snowbank and in the general area.
From the size and number of bullet casings, Mendres believes the murder weapon is a 9mm semi-automatic pistol. He searches for the gun, but it is nowhere to be found. EMTs transfer Philip LaMonaco's body to the hospital as 250 police officers go after his killer. New Jersey and Pennsylvania State Police stop and question motorists. One man remembers seeing 2 men as they left the scene. They were driving a 1977 Chevy Nova with Connecticut license plates. Police set up checkpoints along the Delaware River. Officers search miles of highway and back roads looking for the killers.
The response was overwhelming. People were coming out of the woodwork to help us and offer leads and try to help us find the car, find the people responsible for this.
Hours later, a narcotics detective and a state trooper find the Nova. car has been abandoned on a rural road 3 miles from the crime scene. Detectives find an empty holster. Troopers search the vehicle for clues. They find several bullet holes in the car's exterior.
It was a shot pattern into the hood of the car and into the windshield, and the right front passenger window was shot out, which indicates that he was shooting at the passenger.
Investigators suspect it was likely the passenger of the car who murdered Phil LaMonaco. The driver was in such a hurry to ditch the vehicle, he left behind a crucial piece of evidence.
On the dashboard in plain sight was a Connecticut driver's license in the name of Barry Eastbury.
For now, Eastbury's name and address are investigators' only link to LaMonaco's killer.
And I actually left that scene with another trooper and immediately drove to Connecticut to follow up that lead that night. And we proceeded to the address that was in downtown New Haven, Connecticut.
The address on the Eastbury driver's license turns out to be a hotel rather than a residence.
So it was turning out to be a dead-end lead. We met with the FBI later in the morning, and they told us that they had been at that same hotel a few months earlier following the lead up on an individual by the name of Raymond Luke Levasseur.
Levasseur is one of the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitives. Agents believe he is the leader of a violent radical group called the Sam Melville Jonathan Jackson Unit. The FBI suspects the group of masterminding a series of bank robberies and bombings. Now investigators wonder whether the group is also responsible for the murder of Trooper Phil LaMonaco.
I'd like to take those prints and see if we can match them up.
Agents send Levasseur's file to the state lab in New Jersey to compare his fingerprints with those found in the Nova.
Unfortunately, none of them matched, which we could not believe. It just didn't make any sense.
Ryan takes a closer look at Levasseur's wanted flyer.
I reread the flyer, and on the bottom in small print, right at the last line, it said, "May be accompanied by Thomas William Manning."
FBI agents pull Manning's file. The photo on his wanted poster is the man they know as Barry Eastbury. Examiners match Manning's file fingerprints to those lifted from the Nova, confirming that Barry Eastbury is an alias for Thomas Manning. If Manning is involved in the murder of Philip LaMonaco, investigators are up against a dangerous fugitive. According to FBI files, Manning met Levasseur in prison, where they both served time on drugs, weapons, and robbery charges.
Involved in several bank robberies.
The two men formed a radical group called the Melville Jackson Unit, according to Special Agent Leonard Cross.
They were well versed in a lot of guerrilla tactics. They studied guerrilla manuals. They studied a lot of the radical left literature from the late 60s, the mid 60s, and the early 70s.
The group began a reign of terror, claiming responsibility for 7 bombings in Massachusetts and New York between 1976 and 1979, including the bombing of 2 courthouses, the Middlesex County Courthouse in Lowell, Massachusetts, and the Suffolk County Courthouse in Boston, where 20 people were injured. According to their propaganda, the Melville Jackson Unit targets institutions and businesses to protest government and corporate policies they believe are unfair. FBI Special Agent Ed Peterson is investigating the radical group.
I think they viewed themselves as some champion of the downtrodden, the poor. Actually, they never did anything for the poor, and, all they were committed to were acts of violence.
Agents believe the group funds its violent political agenda with bank robberies, carefully planned operations that are executed with military precision.
It was obvious that these people were not your everyday criminals. They were an organized criminal group who were traveling the New England states and committing numerous crimes, the most serious, obviously, the murder of Trooper LaMonica.
On Christmas Eve, 1981, 2,000 law enforcement officers from several states attend the funeral of Trooper LaMonica. The wave of support overwhelms his wife, Donna.
I was just amazed that all the way up, it was a good half mile from the church, cars had started to park to come to the funeral.
Phil LaMonica was one of the most respected troopers in the state of New Jersey.
He was a great trooper. He really, really was. And I think one of the main things that made him a great trooper was he really, really loved and respected his job. He was one of the good ones.
He was the idol of a lot of young troopers. He had trained a lot of young troopers in the tactics of stopping cars and looking for contraband in vehicles on the highway.
Superintendent Clinton Pagano makes Donna LaMonica a solemn promise. The New Jersey State Police will do everything in their power to bring her husband's killers to justice.
I just could see in his eyes the sincerity, and I just knew he would make sure that from that point is where I grew confidence in knowing they're going to get caught. Whoever they are, they're going to be found and they're going to get caught, because he promised me.
At a nearby municipal building, New Jersey and Pennsylvania State Police work closely with the FBI to find the men who murdered Trooper LaMonica. The task force follows up on dozens of leads. Firearms investigators ask gun shop owners in the area if anyone has sold 9mm ammunition to a man named Barry Eastbury.
They got a hit in Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania, which is right across the river from the shooting.
3 months earlier, a Barry Easterly, not Eastbury, had purchased 9mm ammunition at a gun shop in Stroudsburg. The name seems too close to be a coincidence. If these were the bullets used in the killing, the 3-month time span is an important clue.
We felt that these people resided in this general area. They weren't just passing through. We were working very closely with the Pennsylvania State Police at that time. We notified them about this find.
Pennsylvania State Police.
2 days later, the Pennsylvania State Police receive an unusual phone call.
They left their dog?
A local landlord calls with a complaint.
The Pennsylvania State Police was notified by a fellow by the name of Charles Miller, who lived in Marshall's Creek, Pennsylvania, directly across the river in the greater Stroudsburg area.
Miller owns several rental properties in the area. A dog has been abandoned inside one of his houses. He's not seen the tenants for nearly 2 weeks. According to Miller, the house was rented by a man named Barry Easterly. SWAT teams converge on the rented farmhouse.
Get out! Get out! Get out!
They search the house from room to room. Whoever lived there left in a hurry. The occupants of the house had abandoned clothing, personal photos, and even their dog. In one room, police find radical literature and a sketch featuring an AK-47 assault rifle. In the bedroom, they find the tools of domestic terrorists.
The map again. We found all types of paraphernalia, information on how to make bombs, bomb-making material.
Police also find 9mm bullets, the same caliber that killed Trooper Phil LaMonica. They believe the rented property is a safe house, where Thomas Manning, his wife and children, lived at the time of the LaMonica shooting.
Everything in this trunk, we've got bomb-making materials.
Investigators find documents that offer fresh insight into the radical group's operations.
Especially this right here.
They apparently were planning to pull a bank robbery in Allentown, Pennsylvania.
That's correct.
We had those schematics. We also found a critique of the bank robbery where several policemen were killed a few years before that. And all of these things they had to leave behind because they left in such haste.
In another bedroom, Sergeant Tom Evans finds a small phone book.
We began to write down all the phone numbers were in that book. There were no names, there were nicknames, and there was no area code.
Police also find a photograph of a man they can't identify.
Do you know who that is? Who's this?
According to the landlord, the man in the picture lived in the Mannings' guest room. The family referred to him as Uncle David. Investigators wonder if Uncle David was Manning's passenger the night of the shooting, and whether he is responsible for the murder of Trooper Philip LaMonaco. The search for a cop killer evolves into a manhunt for a group of domestic terrorists. A raid on an abandoned Pennsylvania farmhouse yields two important clues: a mysterious photograph and a book of telephone numbers. Dozens of phone numbers are listed. Sergeant Evans of the New Jersey State Police notes that none of them have area codes.
Trooper said to me, "Those look like Boston phone exchanges." The next morning, we went to Boston and we started to run down the phone numbers to see who we could come up with. There were at least 100 phone numbers in there. One of them had a little note on it that said rent.
How you doing, sir?
The telephone number belongs to a company in Boston that rents out apartments. Investigators meet with the manager.
Possibly one of your tenants?
I showed him the picture. He said to me, "Trooper, I'm sorry, but I hardly ever see these people. They just mail in their checks."
It looks like another dead end. The police give the phone book another look. Next to the rental company's phone number, someone has written a figure: $275.
So I said to the guy, "Do you have any apartment building or apartments that rent for $275?
The manager tells them the company has only one apartment that rents for that amount. It is currently vacant and being renovated.
So we rushed up there and stopped him from repainting the apartment. Massachusetts State Police got their forensic people in there.
The apartment has been thoroughly cleaned, but investigators find fingerprints in obscure places, on a light bulb, and behind the toilet in the bathroom. The tenant left no forwarding address, according to the building supervisor.
So at that point, the guy said to me, "Well, you ought to talk to his girlfriend."
At 2 o'clock in the morning, police interview the suspect's girlfriend.
Is there any information or anybody that you know?
Although she does not tell investigators who her boyfriend really is, she gives them the name of his stepfather. The next morning, Lieutenant Evans drives to the suburbs outside Boston to question the suspect's stepfather.
I showed him the picture and he said, "What has Dickie done now?" And I said, "Dickie who?" And he said, "Dickie Williams." We called the command post, gave him Richard Charles Williams' name. They ran that name against the fingerprints that we had, and bingo, it was him. So we had the second person identified.
Richard Williams was Thomas Manning's passenger the night Phil LaMonaco was murdered. The violent radical is now wanted as a cop killer. Investigators on the case face an extraordinary challenge: finding a group of fugitives who are as elusive as they are dangerous. New England authorities and the FBI join ranks to track down Manning, Levasseur, and Williams. Special Agent Ed Peterson is assigned to assist the New Jersey police in the manhunt.
It was really important, as far as the FBI and all of law enforcement, to put them under a magnifying glass and to look at every possible contact, to try to think like they would think, to try and get into that mindset and to understand, what motivated them and where they would look to go.
The task force sifts through hundreds of hours of intelligence on the Melville-Jackson unit. According to their files, the fugitives have a history of using different aliases to conceal their identities. and various mail drops to hide their locations.
We knew that we had a tough job because they did not remain in one place. They didn't do the conventional things that fugitives generally do. They went to such extremes to hide their identities.
In 1981, a man walks into the town clerk's office in Brattleboro, Vermont with an unusual request. He needs a copy of a birth certificate for an infant who died in the early 1950s. The clerk becomes suspicious.
Can you excuse me for a minute?
Brattleboro is a small town, and she knows the infant's family.
How you doing, sir? Do you have any ID on you?
Is there a problem?
No problem, sir. I just need to see your ID.
Get on the ground, what those doing? Get out, now, get down, get down, down, get down, get down.
Police later identify the man as Raymond Levasseur after finding his fingerprints in an abandoned vehicle nearby. They suspect he was trying to establish a new identity by stealing the birth certificate of a dead infant.
Headed out in the parking lot. It's a white male.
In January 1982, Thomas Manning joins Levasseur on the FBI's 10 most wanted list. Authorities turn up the heat on the fugitives. 4 months later, FBI agent John Markey responds to the scene of a bank robbery. Two masked gunmen had stolen $60,000 from a bank in Burlington, Vermont. According to Agent Markey, the precision of the operation points to the Melville-Jackson unit.
All three individuals that went into the bank went in right after an armored car delivery. One man stood in the lobby. The other two vaulted the counter. One of them took the money from the teledraws. The other one took the money that had just been delivered.
The money in the teledrawers was rigged with die packs.
They look like a stack of money. When you take them out of a bank, there's an electronic sensor that causes them to activate. And then within 7 seconds, they go off, letting off tear gas and a red dye, which dyes the money. They threw about $20,000 out the window because it had dye packs in it. It was apparent to me that we ought to consider Raymond Levasseur and Thomas Manning and maybe his associate Richard Williams as possible suspects in that bank robbery.
2 months later, 3 men rob a bank in Syracuse, New York, netting $195,000. The MO is nearly identical to the Burlington robbery, but with one exception.
They only took the money that was delivered by the armored car. They did not take any of the money out of the teledraws. That way they eliminated the possible die packs. It was my opinion that we were dealing with the same people who robbed the South Burlington branch, and you could account for the change of not taking money from the teledraws because they would have discussed the die packs.
In just 2 months, over $235,000 has been stolen from area banks. Authorities are concerned that the Melville-Jackson unit is amassing a war chest to finance a new wave of terror. With the threat of more bombings looming, investigators make a difficult decision. They will try to find the terrorists by looking for their children. Pictures of the Manning and Levasseur children are distributed to schools, sport clubs, and pediatricians in the area.
Can you take a look at this and just see if you recognize any of these children?
That was very controversial. We had a lot of conversations as far as distributing the pictures of the children, because the children were innocent in this. They just were living with the parents. They were 8, 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old kids.
Investigators feel they have no choice. The group is deadly, and lives are at stake.
You don't know any of the parents either, do you?
Unfortunately, the gamble does not pay off. The fugitives have hidden their children well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
To make matters worse, the gang launches a series of new attacks. On December 16th, police in White Plains, New York, receive a frantic call.
Where are you calling
An unidentified man has phoned in a bomb threat to a local newspaper. According to the caller, the bomb has been planted in an office building. Fortunately, dozens of employees had evacuated before the building exploded. The blast destroyed nearly every window in the building. Inside, investigators find a communique from a group calling themselves the United Freedom Front. The UFF claims responsibility for the bombing. Agents on the case recognize the UFF's distinctive assault rifle logo.
United Freedom Front.
It is nearly identical to a sketch they found in Manning's safe house.
We actually compared those side by side. And we decided that the logo looked enough, in our opinion, that it was them. We thought that the United Freedom Front, who took credit for that bombing, was in fact the new name for the people involved in the monarchy killing.
Yeah, that's not all right.
Over the next year, the UFF claims responsibility for 4 more bombings. On December 14th, 1983, they call the press to issue a chilling statement. They intend to destroy the offices of a national defense contractor in Queens, New York. The caller indicates that a statement from the group can be found in a Manhattan mailbox. The letter denounces U.S. involvement in Central America, the Caribbean, and the Middle East. The bomb squad recovers 2 suitcase bombs before they can detonate. Finding an intact bomb is an important break for Special Agent John Markey.
The materials used in that bomb were very similar to the materials used in the Sam Melville, Jonathan Jackson unit bombings in the 70s. The elements of the bomb that was similar was the type of clock used, that the crystal on top of the clock, a hole was melted into the crystal and a brass screw was screwed in to the crystal.
Special Agent Leonard Cross is familiar with the design. He investigated the group's early bombings in the 1970s. In February 1984, Cross becomes the coordinator of the task force hunting the killers. The investigation into the radical group is now in its 8th year. The terrorists have stayed a step ahead of authorities by repeatedly assuming new identities. Agent Cross and the FBI task force decide to take a new approach.
What we tried to do was plot where we knew they had lived, safe houses, where they had bombed, where they had committed bank robberies. So we started putting this all up on a map.
Slowly but surely, a pattern emerges. The group's activities are concentrated in a 4-state area that includes New York, Massachusetts, Vermont, and Connecticut. In the spring of 1984, the FBI launches Operation Western Sweep, a mission designed to close in on the dangerous fugitives. In 1984, the FBI launches Operation Western Sweep, a mission to apprehend 3 key members of a violent radical group. Agents believe the group has orchestrated numerous acts of domestic terrorism. The New Jersey State Police suspect one of the terrorists also murdered Trooper Phil LaMonaco. Hundreds of investigators comb areas where the group is known to operate.
We had the bombing.
As agents uncover the group's safe houses, the FBI deploys SWAT teams to search them. But the fugitives are always one step ahead, according to Detective Richard Ryan.
It was frustrating because we couldn't apprehend them, but we felt as long as they kept committing crimes, they were still out there, they hadn't gone into total hiding, there was a better chance we could catch them.
Agent John Markey tries to predict when the terrorists will strike again. Based on the group's unique lifestyle, he develops an ingenious theory.
There were a series of 4 bank robberies in 1982 and 1983, in upstate New York along Interstate 90 between Syracuse and Albany, New York.
Markey divides the total amount of money stolen by the number of days between robberies. He calculates that the group is operating on a budget of about $737 per day.
Based on that, you could predict when the next robbery would occur. I was predicting that the next robbery would be between June 1st and June 14th of 1984.
Markey's prediction is right on target. On June 9th, the gang hits a bank in Norfolk, Virginia. The ammo was familiar. 3 armed men enter the building. 2 of them jump the counter. They subdue bank personnel at gunpoint. Ignoring the cash in the drawers, they grab bags of money that have just been delivered by an armored car service.
They did not take any of the money out of the teledrawers. That way they eliminated the possible die packs, bait money, and sounding the alarm.
The gang seems to be getting smarter with each new robbery. Investigators need a lead, however small, to break the case wide open. Special Agent Ed Peterson.
We knew no matter how good any fugitive thinks he or she is, no matter how good they think they are, some point and some time, they're going to make a careless mistake.
In the summer of 1984, the fugitives make that crucial mistake. On August 4th, the owner of a storage facility in Binghamton, New York, contacts the FBI. One of his customers hasn't paid his bill in 2 years. The manager opened the storage unit so he could auction off the contents. What he found inside terrified him.
The contents in there included materials on how to make bombs, how to handle firearms training, research on various corporations, and a lot of radical material, and a lot of Marxist-type literature.
Agents find bomb-making diagrams in the storage unit. They show a timer assembled with brass screws. Earlier in the investigation, agents found an unexploded bomb with similar brass screws at one of the group's targets. The bomb is designed to detonate a massive bundle of dynamite with a single electric charge. The distinctive design links Levasseur and his gang to bombings all over the Northeast. There are hundreds of pieces of evidence in the storage unit. Investigators follow up on every clue, no matter how obscure.
The magazines taken out of the storage bin in Binghamton, New York, at first nobody thought they would be of any value.
But an address label on an old seed catalog reveals a new name in the investigation, Jack Horning. Investigators trace the address to Ansonia, Connecticut. According to neighbors, the Horning family moved away years earlier.
The trooper that was assigned to this lead felt, again, we have another dead-end lead. However, he continued to interview people in the neighborhood, and he developed a babysitter who had lived a few houses down, and she babysat for the Horning children.
The teenager remembers the Hornings well. She tells the trooper that Mrs. Horning was a normal mom. The kids were well behaved. The entire time she worked for the Hornings, nothing out of the ordinary happened. But then she remembers one small incident.
One day she was out with Mrs. Horning and they had a motor vehicle accident.
On a hunch, the trooper follows up with the Connecticut Department of Motor Vehicles. He is unable to find an accident report involving a Mrs. Horning. But one report does match the time and location of the incident.
The key was that the babysitter was listed on the accident report as a passenger in that vehicle.
The name the driver gave police at the time was not Horning, but Himes.
This is interesting.
Judy Himes' Connecticut license has since expired. It was traded for a New York license in 1980.
From Connecticut.
Later, the New York license was turned in for an Ohio license. According to DMV records, the Ohio license is still current. Judy Heim's name, along with her address in Columbus, is forwarded to Sergeant Tom Evans.
So I called the Columbus Police Department. I said, what is at that address? And the guy said to me, it's a mail drop. And a mail drop meant that's them, that's their MO, that's what they used. They didn't have mail sent to their homes.
Okay, let's go.
In Columbus, the FBI rents a vacant house across the street from the mail drop. From there, agents can monitor the facility with video cameras.
The mail drop is a 24/7 operation, so this was going to be difficult to surveil.
On November 3rd, 3.5 weeks into the stakeout, a woman arrives at the mail drop. Investigators visually identify her as the wife of Raymond Levasseur.
It's the first time now in probably over 10 to 12 years that any law enforcement agency had any of these people actually in sight under surveillance. So you can imagine how the adrenaline was pumping.
The fugitive's wife is law enforcement's only link to the terrorists. Rather than making an arrest, agents follow her, hoping she will lead them to her husband. In 1984, the FBI and a multi-state task force trail a group of domestic terrorists. The violent radicals are suspected of a series of bank robberies and bombings. And the murder of a New Jersey State Police trooper. Investigators track the group from a safe house in Connecticut to a mail drop in Columbus, Ohio. After nearly a decade, their only lead to the terrorists' location is the wife of gang leader Ray Levasseur. Agents follow her as she leaves the mail drop. They know that, like the rest of the group, Levasseur's wife is skilled at covering her tracks and at spotting a tail. They're careful to keep their distance, using aerial surveillance as a backup in case she slips away. Detective Richard Ryan.
She was on and off the highway numerous times, stopping, starting, looking around, taking local roads back onto the interstate, back off. So it was a difficult surveillance.
2.5 hours later, the target stops at a house in Deerfield, Ohio.
Once she arrived at the house, a surveillance was set up in the area from different locations as best as they could. And it was a very rural area. There were farmers' fields, cornfields, things of that nature.
New Jersey State Trooper Richard Tao watches the house from a distance.
Approximately 20 minutes later, a male subject left the house and got in his car and left the area.
The male subject is Richard Williams, the man wanted for the murder of New Jersey State Trooper Philip Lamonaco. FBI agents follow Williams to a safe house in Cleveland. They now have 2 houses under surveillance, 60 miles apart.
In one location, we had the suspected murderer of Trooper Philip Lamonaco. In the second location, we had top 10 FBI fugitive Ray Levasseur. Surveillances continued through the night and into the morning.
Around 9:40 a.m., the Levasseurs leave their house.
All right, fellas. Let me know when you're in position so we can go. Go, 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 go.
The SWAT team moves in. They arrest Ray Levasseur, along with his wife.
The call then immediately went out to Ohio, up to Cleveland, that Levasseur was in custody, so now a decision was made to raid the Cleveland, Ohio house.
In Cleveland, agents and police surround the home of Richard Williams. Williams, the suspected murderer and terrorist, gives up without a fight. After years of work, the task force has captured 2 of the group's 3 key men in less than an hour.
We had Ray Lawasser and his wife. We had Dickie Williams. The only remaining fugitives that we had was Tom Manning and his wife.
Agents question Richard Williams about Thomas Manning's location. Williams stalls for hours. With every passing moment, the fugitives have more time to escape.
Where is he?
Finally, Williams breaks down and reveals the addresses of 3 safe houses located in Jefferson, Ohio. One of them belongs to Thomas Manning.
We proceeded to that location and conducted a very extensive search.
Williams' stall tactics have given the Mannings enough time to flee, but not enough time to cover their tracks. Inside their safe house, investigators find handguns, fake IDs, and $32,000 in cash. They also find a 1,000-page record of the group's activities. In one room, agents find a police scanner tuned to a frequency used by the FBI. In another room, they find explosives and bomb-making supplies. They also find a bomb kit that contains distinctive brass screws that match unexploded bombs recovered in 1976 and 1983. They recover a 9mm semi-automatic pistol.
Smith & Wesson.
At the FBI forensics lab, technicians analyze the gun. They compare the bullet that killed Trooper Philip Lamonaco to bullets fired from the 9mm handgun.
We were able to determine that that was the weapon that was used to kill Phil Lamonaco.
Although they have finally found the murder weapon, tracing the owner of the gun will be difficult. The serial number has been filed off. Technicians use a chemical solution to raise the number. It is barely legible beneath the surface of the metal. Agents trace the 9mm to a gun shop in Norfolk, Virginia. There it was purchased by a woman named Deborah Ann Fury. Fury had listed an address in Virginia Beach. Investigators check out the location. It turns out to be another mail drop. The surveillance team waits to see who will collect the mail. When a woman arrives and opens the box, agents identify her. Deborah Ann Fury is in reality Thomas Manning's wife. The FBI has finally found a link to the last member of the radical terrorist group. In Ohio, the FBI and police have arrested key members of a violent radical group charged with robbery and domestic terrorism. One of them, Richard Williams, is suspected of killing a police officer. 2 of the group's members, Thomas Manning and his wife, are still at large. It has been 5 months since Manning and his family fled their safe house in the rural town of Deerfield. The FBI traces a gun found in the safe house to an address in Virginia Beach, Virginia. As it turns out, the address is another mail drop. After weeks of surveillance, agents spot the fugitive's wife picking up the mail. Special Agent Leonard Cross.
We knew she had a scanner and should be scanning for police radio frequencies as well as FBI frequencies. We had special radios that were all encrypted that could not be picked up. And the surveillance at this point took us north.
Manning's wife leads investigators to a safe house in Norfolk about 20 miles away. They do not want to arrest her until they can be sure her husband is at home. An hour later, investigators follow her to a nearby shopping center.
Get out!
As an arrest team takes her into custody, a second team moves in on the safe house. Manning is now outside, unaware he's being watched.
He had no weapons. The decision was made so no one would get hurt. This would be the time to make the arrest.
Get out! Don't resist! Stop it!
Thomas Manning, the last of the terrorists, is arrested in his own backyard. In 1987, Thomas Manning and Richard Williams stand trial in Somerville, New Jersey. Donna LaMonaco, the widow of Trooper Phil LaMonaco, attends the trial.
It was very important for me to be a part of the trial. I needed to be there. I needed to know exactly what went on. I wanted to make sure they were the two that killed Phil.
The two self-proclaimed revolutionaries are sentenced to life in prison for the murder of Trooper Philip LaMonaco. They receive additional sentences for their roles in a series of bank robberies and bombings starting in 1975. In separate trials, the wife of Thomas Manning is found guilty of conspiracy and sentenced to 15 years. Raymond Levasseur receives 45 years in prison for his role in the group's terrorist activities. His wife is released after spending several months in custody.
I think it's really important to set the record straight that these individuals, Levasseur, Manning, Williams, they were nothing but criminals. These guys want to call themselves as freedom fighters, revolutionaries. At the end of the day, they were criminals. And that's the bottom line. I mean, when you commit bank robberies, when you set off bombs, when you kill a police officer who's only out there doing his job, they were nothing more than criminals.
After the trials, members of the New Jersey State Police visit Phil LaMonaco's grave for the very first time.
We went as a group to his gravesite. We felt that we had the respect of Phil. He would know that we had done our best.
2 decades after Philip LaMonaco's death, people still leave flowers and flags on the side of the New Jersey highway he protected. His trademark is gunfire. His goal, grab the cash, no matter who gets in the way. In his wake, he leaves terrified victims, fleeting glimpses, and few clues for the FBI agents on his trail. But they are determined to find him and end this gunman's reign of terror.
In the late 1980s, the FBI matched wits with a cunning bank robber, a lone gunman responsible for the longest string of unsolved bank robberies in FBI history. I'm Jim Kallstrom, former head of the FBI's New York office. The robber's planning was meticulous. He executed his crimes with military precision. It would take the combined skills of local police and dozens of agents to catch a criminal mastermind they called the Shootist.
San Diego, California. On November 5th, 1987, the late morning quiet shatters with a gun blast in a local bank. A gunman orders customers to the ground, threatening to shoot whoever disobeys. The robber forces the teller to fill his bag with money from all the cash drawers, warning against alarms, die packs, or marked bills. He avoids the vault, which would take more time. This robber hits hard and gets out fast. Employees call police immediately.
Hello?
But even in the best-case scenario, it takes several seconds to get through to an operator, and several minutes for dispatched units to arrive. By then, the gunman is long gone. Authorities conduct a full crime scene investigation. Although the man wore no gloves, he was careful enough not to touch any surface and left behind no fingerprints. Bank robbery is a federal crime. The case goes to the FBI. Bank robbery coordinator Special Agent Jack Kelly considers this gunman a top priority. He's a takeover robber, taking command of the entire bank rather than slipping a teller a note. It's a rare style, used in less than 5% of bank robberies.
Even on the takeover style robbers, most of them didn't fire weapons in the bank. So he was, again, even a smaller percentage of the small percentage of takeover robbers that we had at the time. So from that aspect, he was considered to be much more aggressive and much more dangerous.
Also, he doesn't use a partner inside the bank, as most takeover robbers do. His violence has a profound effect on his victims.
Victims in a takeover-style robbery are pretty traumatized by the event, especially when there's shots fired in the bank, and consequently your descriptions can vary dramatically. I mean, as far as the age, the height, the weight, everything.
Some victims say he was wearing a disguise. Others disagree. The differing descriptions are of no real help, so agents turn to the bank's security camera photos.
We did have some surveillance pictures of mediocre quality at that time, and it was not a great deal of assistance to us in trying to identify who this individual might have been.
The photos show only that the robber is a white male about 6 feet tall with a beard and mustache. Agents face a serious challenge. No evidence left behind. No reliable description of the robber. Special Agent Kelly believes it's not the man's first time robbing a bank. Reviewing unsolved cases for similarities, Kelly suspects the same man robbed another San Diego bank a year earlier.
The modus operandi was identical, with someone coming into the bank, firing the gun in the ceiling, vaulting the counter. Similar description.
The gunman left no evidence behind.
The fact that there were so few clues was an indication that this guy was pretty good, and he really probably planned these robberies very well.
Soon agents learn the gunman is not finished in the area.
After he robbed the second time in San Diego, he actually came back a month later and robbed a third time in San Diego using the identical MO and firing the shots into the ceiling.
The robber's choice to fire his weapon makes him a deadly threat.
I don't think a robber that does something like this would hesitate to shoot somebody if somebody actually tried to stop him.
California?
As a rule, Special Agent Kelly attaches code names to serial bank robbers to allow for shorthand communication among agents. Also, a catchy nickname increases publicity.
The media would be more willing to pick up the story and to show pictures in the newspaper or on television, which would hopefully help us generate some leads.
Kelly dubs this one the shootist for his distinctive and dangerous MO. On December 14th, 1987, the shootist robs a fourth California bank in Mission Viejo, 70 miles north of San Diego.
Check inside the bank. I'm going to go see what's in the convenience store here, see what we can find.
It was my responsibility to review all the robberies that would come in from the surrounding regional FBI offices.
FBI agents respond to the bank.
When a robbery occurs, you do an investigation inside the bank itself for any evidence. but you also do an investigation outside the bank to look for evidence or any possible witnesses that may have seen this individual. And we did both on all these robberies.
Yet they get nowhere, like they're chasing a ghost. So far, the shootist has stolen at least $44,000. But it's not just about the money. Agents worry that at some point he'll shoot someone.
We're dealing with somebody we thought that was going to become more and more aggressive during the course of his robberies, and consequently more and more dangerous. And it was somebody that definitely needed to be identified and stopped.
After a year-long absence from California, the shootist struck 3 times in 5 weeks. Kelly suspects the shootist must have hit somewhere in that year absence.
He's got to be somewhere else. He's got to be robbing banks somewhere else besides California.
Checking with other FBI field offices, Kelly discovers a string of similar unsolved robberies in Texas, with dates that fit neatly into the gap between California robberies. During one of the unsolved heists, the gunman used the sort of violence agents had feared. In July 1986, a white male with a beard and sunglasses hit a bank in Abilene, Texas. After firing his gun into the ceiling, he forced the manager to fill his bag. As in California, he wanted only cash from the teller drawers and warned against alarms, die packs, or marked bills. The employees followed all instructions to survive, but then...
Don't you move! Don't you move! Don't be looking at me! Stay out of the same thing's gonna happen to you!
The robber ran off, leaving the bank manager writhing in pain from a gunshot to the abdomen.
Go lock the door, go lock the door. I need the police here right away. I'm at Everly Bank. We've been robbed and the manager's been shot.
Texas Rangers, the FBI, and EMTs responded immediately. The manager was gravely injured, but she survived. The other witnesses couldn't provide a solid description. It happened so fast, and they were so terrified, they didn't get a good look at the gunman. The crime scene investigation came up empty, and the security cameras provided only more photos of a robber with obscured features. Special Agent Kelly contacts the Texas Rangers, who are working the unsolved robberies.
Ranger Thomas.
And investigators in the 2 states pool their information. They know the shootist targets branches near highway on-ramps for a quicker escape. The investigators agree the shootist likely has a getaway driver, but no car has been spotted. Each heist is as clean as the last, and no solid leads emerge. The shootist pulls off 6 more heists in Texas and California in 1988. Investigators hoped the media attention would continue. They need someone who recognizes the gunman to call in a tip.
But because of the danger of this individual, we were hoping to get as much cooperation as we could, and we did. Local newspapers would run pictures of this individual. The local television stations ran pictures of this individual.
With the ongoing media coverage, the shootist rises to infamy. His is an astonishing spree. 14 known bank heists in 3 years, all perfectly planned and executed. The shootist is destined to make FBI record books. A cunning adversary, like they've never seen before. By 1988, a man called the Shootist has robbed at least 14 banks in Texas and California. Special Agent Jack Kelly.
He was well organized and planned things out well enough where he didn't leave a lot to track him with.
What he does leave behind are bullets fired into the ceiling. If forensic examiners can find rifling marks on the slugs, they can run them through their ballistics database. And if the gun has been used in other crimes, they might get a lead on the gunman's identity. but that's a lot of ifs. Ballistics experts determined the slugs came from a .38 caliber revolver. But there's a problem with finding traceable rifling characteristics.
The rounds that we did find were pretty well damaged. They weren't really going to be much benefit for identification as far as the rifling was concerned.
The shootist continues his spree. His 17th known robbery is in the San Diego suburb of University City. Once again, no hard evidence remains in the bank. But outside, investigators find signs of just how meticulous the shootist is. It appears that before the heist, he loosened fence boards across his escape route so that after the robbery, he could reach his getaway car faster. Special Agent Kelly has chased more than 100 robbers, but this one's the most professional he's encountered by far.
And you had to give him some credit, he was good. But you always had the hope that maybe there was some piece of evidence or some witness, some other part of the puzzle that you could put together.
Yet despite a full neighborhood canvass, agents come up empty. By the middle of 1989, the shootist is made off with nearly $250,000. And he's struck in at least 10 different cities.
Anytime an individual is mobile and he's able to move from not only city to city, but state to state, it really kind of complicates the investigation because there are multiple jurisdictions.
Kelly brings together law enforcement from around the country. California and Texas FBI agents, local police, and Texas Rangers work together, determined to find that one clue that has eluded them.
The more eyes and ears you have out there at the time, the more likely you are to get a break and catch this individual.
Because the shootist acts like a professional, agents suspect he has an arrest record for robbery.
One of the logical leads to take is to look for people that just recently are released from prison and maybe going back to their old ways again.
Investigators asked about bank robbers released from prison in 1986, when the shootist's spree began. But it's a dead end. No one recognizes the man. In the surveillance photos, it's difficult to determine what the man really looks like.
And the hair, the mustache, it didn't appear to be real. I mean, it was extremely dark in color.
The task force concludes the shootist likely uses elaborate disguises. Wigs, mustaches, even makeup to change his complexion.
When we first realized that he was probably wearing disguises, we actually took a number of the surveillance pictures to different costume shops.
Agents show shop employees the photos, asking if they recognize the man or the disguises. But it's another dead end. Investigators analyzed the shootist's bank robberies, hoping to find a pattern. They compare the amounts taken to the frequency of the heists and determine the shootist spends about $3,000 a week. When he runs low on money, he hits another bank.
You were able to see, not necessarily a pattern, but you knew that he was going to need X amount of money after a certain period of time.
Investigators note the shootist usually strikes on Mondays and Fridays and often robs different branches of the same banking companies.
There are hundreds of bank branches in the general area where he hits. He was just a kid in a candy store out there with trying to select where he wanted to rob next, and it was our job to try to outguess him.
The team sets up surveillance on branches of the banks the shooter seems to favor. They watch on Mondays and Fridays, the robber's favorite days. It's a long shot.
And the problem we had was we had absolutely no idea where exactly he would hit. There were so many branches, so many targets.
Central, this is Team 3, reporting nothing.
Manpower is limited.
Yeah, I'll stick it.
Predicting which bank he'll hit next proves impossible. Bank robbers often use casinos to launder stolen money. The task force sends bank surveillance photos to casino security offices. One California casino responds with a good lead. A regular high roller there looks a lot like the shootist.
They were willing enough to give us their surveillance photos of the individual that they had suspected.
Agents track down the man and interview him.
Special Agent Manuel with the FBI California.
He does resemble the shootist, but he has solid alibis for the robbery dates. Investigators eliminate him as a suspect. Another lead crossed off the list.
We'll be in touch. Okay.
On June 23, 1989, the elusive shootist strikes in Arlington, Texas, his 18th known heist. He has now hit banks over a 1,400-mile area. This time, a teller slips an exploding dye pack into his bag. When it blows, it renders the stolen money unusable. A few hours later, the shootist robs another bank. He's never struck twice in one day. It's a reckless move.
Away from the counter, hands out where I can see him.
Agents fear he's becoming more desperate. Special Agent Kelly fears it's only a matter of time before someone gets hurt.
The more robberies that he did and the more times he shot the weapon, including the time he shot the teller down in Texas, that's a great concern to law enforcement, obviously, because this individual, we thought, had a lot of potential for possibly killing someone eventually.
And the way the shootist operates, he could take his next victim anywhere, at any time. In the late 80s, a team of investigators from Texas and California hunts the shootist, a cunning bank robber who begins each heist with gunfire, grabs the cash fast, then disappears without a trace. As the robberies pile up, the shootist becomes infamous in the Western U.S. police community. Everyone's on the lookout. Special Agent Jack Kelly.
Anytime in any jurisdiction that the shootist hit a bank, we would send out our communications to the other offices as quickly as possible, providing them with whatever information we have in the way of maybe some new clues or new witnesses or any better surveillance photographs.
From the photos, the task force determines the shootist likely uses a Smith & Wesson .38 revolver, a handgun popular with police departments. Investigators also notice he indexes his finger on the side of his weapon, just as officers are trained to do. It's an ominous possibility. The shootist might be a cop.
You, come here!
Even if he's not an officer, he seems to know how they operate. Investigators suspect he goes as far as surveilling local officers to learn their patrol routes, and then chooses targets away from those routes to increase police response time. The elusive gunman treats bank robbery like a profession, and his planning has paid off in more than 20 robberies. Investigators welcome the continuing media coverage. They know their best chance of finding the shootist might be through the public's help. One witness in particular provides an interesting lead. After the 1989 heist in Mission Viejo, a resident near the robbed bank saw a man climb into the trunk of a car, which then sped off. He described the car as a red four-door with California plates, but he didn't see the driver or get the plate number. Agents run checks on every car that fits the description in California, but there are thousands. It would take months to track down each car. But the sighting does confirm one suspicion.
When we found out that he was getting into the trunk of a vehicle, we knew that he obviously had an accomplice in these robberies.
On March 30th, 1990, The shootist robs the same Texas bank he hit a year earlier. To investigators, the repeat job means he's getting even more brash, unafraid of being recognized by anyone. By the end of 1990, the task force ties the shootist to 27 robberies that have netted him nearly $400,000, all without a single usable print left behind.
He was very cautious about vaulting the counters, not to touch things. Even going out the doors, he would hit the doors with his elbows or his hip to push them open.
Somehow, agents need to find a way into the shootist's secretive world. They take the case to behavioral profilers at the FBI Academy in Quantico, Virginia.
It's not that it's going to be able to place a name on the individual, but it'll kind of give us a little bit more about the guy's personality.
Studying details of each known robbery, the FBI profiler creates a behavioral sketch of the shootist. Because most criminals start working in their comfort zone, the profiler suspects the shootist is from Texas, where the first robberies occurred. The gunman's level of precision indicates possible military training.
Come here.
Since the shootist has gone so long without anyone turning him in, the profiler suggests the robber has only one fiercely loyal accomplice. And experience with other takeover robbers makes the profiler believe the shootist will grow more violent as his spree continues. It's possible the gunman will choose a shootout over surrender.
This guy's going to be willing to shoot his way out of the bank or even take hostages to make an escape from the bank if he's cornered.
In April 1991,
Did you actually see a gun?
the shootist expands his turf into Northern California, robbing a San Jose bank of $15,000.
Okay. Did he shoot the guy?
San Jose Detective Sergeant Jack Baxter.
We never found a witness as to where he went, what kind of car he had, did he have accomplices. We had no idea.
This time, the shootist leaves something behind. A partial palm print is found on the counter. But investigators can't make a match. Law enforcement agencies don't include palm prints in their files. The task force is back to square one. 2 months later, the shootist robs a bank in Bellevue, Washington, just outside Seattle. He's expanding his territory.
What do you have? I got off you in Bellevue, Washington.
Seattle was now in the loop. Now we knew that he was broadening his horizons and moving on to other states.
The elusive bandit is one of the most prolific and widespread robbers in modern FBI history. By 1991, the 5-year statute of limitations expires on his earliest robberies, so he can't be charged for them. Agents are racing the clock.
Well, he was a violent multi-state bank robber who was very successful, been hitting every 6 to 8 weeks, and no one had a clue as to who he was or where he was from.
In August, the shootist robs a bank in Los Altos, California, bringing his known total to $474,457. Investigators find a solid clue, a false mustache. It's the first evidence recovered that might be physically linked directly to the shootist. But at the time, DNA analysis is expensive and time-consuming, and they have no suspect profile to compare it to.
Unfortunately, that wasn't of any evidentiary value to us other than the fact that we confirmed that he was wearing a disguise, obviously.
By the end of 1991, investigators linked the shootist to 33 armed robberies in 18 cities. Investigators have nothing. They need a break, and soon. Investigating the longest string of unsolved bank robberies in modern FBI history, agents have little but grainy photos of the man they call the shootist. In them, they see the robber is wearing something beneath his shirt. FBI Special Agent Jack Kelly.
At first we thought it might have been body armor, but under closer scrutiny it appeared that this thing was really covering the lower abdomen and back portion of his body.
It could be a brace, meaning the shootist might have a bad back.
Although he really didn't display that with his ability to vault the teller counters. But these back braces were probably just to support his ability to be able to do that.
Determined to run down every lead, investigators contact chiropractors in the areas near the banks. But they have only blurry surveillance photos of a disguised man, and they can't get to every doctor in 3 states.
And there's quite a few chiropractors, but we did cover as many as we possibly could, and we really didn't have any luck.
It's another dead end in the years-long search for the mysterious bandit. 1992 brings 7 more shootist heists, including the repeat robbery of the bank in Bellevue, Washington. New total, nearly $600,000. Seattle FBI Special Agent Don Glasser.
Tried to process the bank for fingerprints, extensive interviews of the witnesses, and of course, our wildest hope would is someone would say, yes, I saw them get into a specific car.
No, I walked by, I saw the people standing out there.
But no one saw anything.
Where are you heading to? Well, I was heading to the other bank. I gotta take a deposit over there. Okay,
There is this concern that you're not serving the public well, that here's a man that's allowed to come in and do a bank robbery and fire a shot, and eventually there could be an accident or an intentional shooting. And, you know, you feel it's frustration that you didn't do everything you could, although you can't think of anything else to be done.
They must stop the shootist before he graduates to murder. During a heist in San Jose, the shootist's luck begins to wane. This time, before he vanishes, the bank security camera catches the best shots yet of his face. A San Jose police forensic artist uses the photos to build a composite sketch of what the shootist would look like without his disguises. Recreating features that are obscured requires a thorough knowledge of human physiology and a remarkable artistic eye. Agents blanket the target areas with the sketch, asking Crime Stopper programs to air it regularly, and placing it in dozens of banks. San Jose Detective Sergeant Jack Baxter.
We thought that in order to get this guy, we needed the help of the community. We needed somebody to call in with information, something that they had seen or heard.
On May 11th, 1994, investigators get the break they need. An anonymous caller says he knows the shootist, though it's no slam dunk.
The information was fairly generic. The name that was given was Johnny Williams, or John Williams, and then he also supposedly used the name of Robert Hall.
The caller says Williams is about 40 years old, drives a red 4-door, and has a devoted accomplice, his wife. He says Williams is always armed, has a hair-trigger temper, and has vowed never to be taken alive. In fact, he and his wife have a suicide pact if they're ever cornered. This is a good tip, but the case is far from over.
Those names are so common that there were literally hundreds of Johnny Williams and Robert Halls that we had to go through. And we tried to narrow the list down to the ones that were approximately the same age as the caller had given.
Agents cull through California DMV records and find a Johnny Madison Williams and a Robert Hall that appear in their photos to be the same man. They then compare the photos to the composite sketch.
It was an exact match for the sketch done by our police artist, just as if he had done it right off the picture. So we knew that we had the right guy.
California fingerprints drivers. The DMV fingerprint records confirm Hall and Williams are the same man. Johnny Madison Williams is a former Marine from Texas and has a record for robbery and theft there. Williams' wife, Carol, bought a .38 revolver like the one in bank security footage. And Carol drives a red 4-door registered in her maiden name. Investigators find no legitimate source of income, yet the couple lives in a $350,000 house overlooking the ocean in Los Osos, California. FBI Special Agent Jim Wilkins.
The area where he was living was on high ground overlooking Morro Bay. It was an affluent area that actually had one road in.
It's an exposed area where agents might stand out as strangers.
We did not know where Johnny Williams was at the time.
Despite the risk, FBI agents have to check the house. They find a spot they hope is obscured and set up surveillance.
We knew he carried a weapon. We knew he would use it. We also had information from the anonymous tipster that he carried that weapon all the time.
Dispatch, no movement.
The agents see no sign that anyone's at the house. The team watches and waits.
We had made a contingency plan that if we saw Williams returning in that vehicle, we would do a felony car stop before he got into the neighborhood where we had safe fields of fire and where there were no escape routes for him in his vehicle.
Agents watch the house for several days, but the couple fails to show.
We're staying to the end of the shift.
Investigators suspect the shootist is off preparing for another heist. Jack Kelly has a hunch it will be in the Seattle area. The shootist is robbed there in one-year intervals, and the year is up. Kelly contacts Seattle Special Agent Don Glasser.
He said, it's definitely going to happen. He's going to definitely rob in your area, so be on the lookout.
It's just a hunch, but it's all they have. Glasser hits the streets looking for the red car.
I was out of the office and on the street so I could be in the vicinity of the Bellevue area. Getting very antsy, very excited about being prepared to respond to a dispatch saying that there was a 91, a bank robbery.
July 1st, 1994. The shootist strikes again. He robs a bank in Kirkland, Washington, just 10 miles north of where Special Agent Glasser is on patrol looking for him. After his trademark gunshot, the shootist orders a teller to load his bag with cash. As before, he warns against bait bills or die packs and threatens to shoot if she tries anything. The teller accidentally drops wooden paperweights in the bag, which the shootist mistakes for die packs. He's enraged. July 1st, 1994. The shootist commits his 48th bank robbery. A frightened teller angers the robber, but she is spared. The gunman runs out without firing another shot and disappears before police and the FBI can respond. Investigators get word of the latest robbery. Special Agent Jack Kelly's hunch about Seattle was right.
We knew where he was at this point, at least what vicinity of the country he was in the general Seattle area.
Kelly has already flagged Williams' credit cards, so he'll be notified if one is used. Just after the Kirkland robbery, the plan works.
I was fortunate enough to be able to get some information from one particular credit card company that had a recent transaction up in the state of Washington at a particular hotel up there.
Seattle Special Agent Don Glasser rushes to the hotel.
I went up there very excited. I know now we've got some real good information.
The hotel is in Bothell, 10 miles from the latest robbed bank. Johnny Williams used a credit card in the name of his alias, Robert Hall, to check in. But there's no guarantee he's still there.
I drove through the parking lot. I saw the red card sitting in the parking lot, nose in the parking space.
When Glasser calls in the plate number, It comes back, registered to Carol Williams, under her maiden name of Hawkins.
Hello, sir. How can I help you today?
Yeah, let's see the manager, please.
If Williams is still in the hotel, they must be careful not to tip him off or create a barricade or hostage situation.
What I really need from you is I need you to look at this picture, okay? I need you to tell me if...
The manager recognizes suspect Johnny Williams as Robert Hall and says he and his wife have not checked out.
So I immediately called Jack Kelly back. He gave him the news and suggested he get an airplane and fly north, and he was already packing his bags.
At that point in the investigation, I was very excited. I contacted my counterpart, Jack Baxter, from the San Jose PD, told him they had the guy, not only we got him identified, but also we know where he is. So Jack hopped on a plane, and I hopped on a plane.
Glasser also calls for reinforcements from the Seattle police and FBI.
I'm here in Bothell at the hotel.
We made sure that none of our agents wore radios, guns, raid jackets, FBI, ball caps, any kind of identifying. Ask them to act normal when they were moving around.
Within minutes, more agents and detectives quietly arrive and set up a perimeter.
We made sure that no FBI four-door, as we call them, G-rides, were visible to this guy, that we would use surveillance vehicles. If we happened to casually look out his window, he wouldn't see anything unusual happening outside. We set up locations completely surrounding the hotel. We rented a couple rooms that would give us a base to operate from. So there was no way that he would walk out. If he detected us, then he might try and escape. We made sure we had it really covered.
Rather than rush the room, the investigators decide to wait until they get a visual ID of Williams.
Yeah, I'm going to take a break probably about half an hour.
We had made sure we had an eyeball on his door at all times.
By nightfall, Detective Baxter and Special Agent Kelly arrive from California. Detective Jack Baxter.
We didn't want to move too fast. We had to have patience, and we wanted to make sure we could arrest him in a way that nobody was going to get hurt.
The agents want to take Williams into custody outside his room in case he has guns inside.
As dinner time approached, we hoped that we'd see him come down and go to eat or something like that, and we were prepared to arrest him if he did that.
But hours pass with no sign of Williams or his wife. While they watch, investigators have to stay under the shootist's radar and not use police radios.
We had been told he had a scanner, so we had to be careful what we said on the radio for fear of tipping him off that we were there.
It does appear someone is in the room. Special Agent Jack Kelly.
We knew that there was a light on in there. We could see the light, all the drapes were drawn, and we could see the flashing of the television in there.
After 7 years, agents and police may finally have the shootist cornered. After an 8-year search, the FBI believes they have traced Johnny Madison Williams, the shootist, to a Washington State hotel room. A full day and night of surveillance passes with no movement from the room. In the morning, agents devise a ruse to see if their suspect is actually there. They recruit a hotel employee to help. Investigators show the man what their target looks like and ask him to knock on the door to ask a maintenance question and get a good look at whoever's inside. Despite the danger, the employee has to act natural. If Williams gets spooked, he could turn violent.
I need to change your filters.
When the door opens, the hotel employee asks when would be a good time to change the room's air filters. Detective Jack Baxter.
Our suspect told him that he was going to leave in an hour so he could come back in an hour and change the filters. Well, he ran back to us and positively identified him as being in the room. We had the room secured, so there's no way he was going to get out.
Now they know the shootist is definitely there, and in an hour he should emerge.
I want everybody in place in 45.
An hour passes. Then 2. Williams could be on to them. But then an opportunity presents itself. Special Agent Jack Kelly.
There was a phone call from that room down to the front desk, and he had asked if he could borrow a typewriter because he wanted to write a letter to someone. And he was asking the people at the front desk if they could bring the typewriter up to the room. We instructed him not to do that.
On the FBI's order, the manager tells Williams he's welcome to use the typewriter in an office near the front desk.
Which he agreed to. Say be down shortly.
The small office is a good place for an arrest, away from the public. No chance of escape. Special Agent Don Glasser.
We quickly go to the room, decide where the typewriter is going to be, do a little quick rearranging of furniture so that we can go into that room once he's in there and not be obstructed by furniture. We have a nice clean path to get to him.
As a final touch, investigators place a sheet listing the Miranda arrest rights in the typewriter. Then hide in an adjacent room and wait for the word from their men outside. After 40 tense minutes, a man leaves the room and heads toward the front desk. It's Johnny Williams.
We saw him walking across the parking lot. Absolutely no question in our mind that is him. We recognized him as if he were our best friend.
He just left his room. He's on his way to the lobby.
This is it. The culmination of an 8-year chase.
He walked into the front desk, and they instructed him to go over to this office.
Mr. Williams, the office is ready.
So he walked behind the front desk and went over there.
Use this typewriter and this extra paper down here in the drawer. Just page me if you need anything else.
Williams is cornered, cut off from escape. Agents know he is dangerous. They are prepared for the worst. But he is completely caught off guard. Agents take him into custody without a struggle. He is unarmed. Because of the investigators' careful planning, it's a perfectly quiet arrest.
I called him by his true name. I said, Johnny Madison Williams Jr., it's over. And his head kind of dropped.
Next, agents have to get Williams' wife, Carol.
We figured there was no reason to charge into the room, but we'd just wait long enough and she would come down. In fact, she did.
Right now.
She came out of the room and she was going to her car. And we just stepped out and took her into custody there without incident.
Freeze, FBI, you're under arrest. Place your hands where I can see them. Place them on top of the car. Hands on the car. Hands on top of the car. Hands on top of the car. Don't move. Don't move, okay? There you go. Use your left hand. Other hand. Move the FBI, okay? You're under arrest.
Once again, a safe arrest. Now agents go looking for evidence.
He provided a consent to search his room. And in that room, he had a couple scanners. He had handy-talkies. He had disguises. He had money.
They also discover the shootist's own notes, a log of all his robberies.
There was a gray briefcase that had a detailed record of the bank robberies, very, very organized. The date, the day of the week, information on the total, the address of the bank, the name of the bank. Very, very, very incriminating evidence.
Investigators find more in Williams' car.
He had 2 pistols and they were in the trunk of his car. We recognized the 4-inch .38 revolver from the pictures, surveillance pictures. We knew we had the right weapon. He had a 2-inch revolver that we hadn't seen before. Both of them were loaded.
The investigators separate Williams and his wife while they await transport to an FBI office for booking. Williams agrees to talk.
We linked him to, I think, a total of 48 robberies. And when I did the interview, he asked me that. He says, "How many do you have me for?" I said, "Well, how many do you think we have you for, John?" He says, "Oh," he says, "you know, you wouldn't be here arresting me and know my name and everything else. You probably have all 56.
Williams goes on to detail each of the 48 robberies the FBI know about, plus 8 they don't.
The entire interview eventually lasted about 12 hours, and I was writing constantly. I mean, I had writer's cramp at the end of the 12 hours with all the information he was providing.
Johnny Madison Williams took his work seriously, casing banks for weeks, outlining intricate escape plans. He says he wore the brace after injuring his back in a car accident and frequented chiropractors, just not the ones investigators got to. Knowing the FBI would try to trace his disguises, he stocked up in Dallas before he started his robbery spree. He tells agents he studied police routes, radio dispatch codes. All that work brought him close to $1 million in stolen cash, until authorities stopped him. Yet it wasn't just the agents and officers working the case who solved it.
Many times it's the assistance of the public that leads to the capture and successful resolution of these cases. It's very important. I think no more so than now with the terrorism threat. Is that important?
Carol Williams pleads guilty and receives 20 years for her role in the shootist robberies. Her husband, Johnny Madison Williams, the shootist himself, also pleads guilty to the 27 robberies still under the statute of limitations. He is sentenced to 92 years in federal prison, his unprecedented reign finally over.